It was October 1st, 2017, when Jesse Galganov went missing, leaving behind not a single trace of evidence for investigators to follow. Jesse was just 22 years old, and after getting a rough start in life, decided to go backpacking through Peru on a mission of rediscovering who he truly was, and in essence just proving to himself that he could do whatever he set his mind to. But almost immediately after beginning his journey, Jesse went missing. Detectives spent more than a year searching for any clues that could point to where Jesse had gone. But strangely enough, what they didn't find was much more shocking than what they did. Jesse Galganov was born in Montreal, Quebec on February 8, 1985. He grew up alongside his parents Todd and Alyssa and his sister Sammy. Those who knew Jesse described him as persistently happy, with a positive outlook on life. He had a huge heart and was extremely empathetic. He had a huge amount of friends who continue to remember him fondly to this day. Jesse was always very active and was the captain of his high school football team. But due to a severe concussion when he was 17 years old, he faced some educational setbacks. This left him unable to read and study as easily as the rest of us, and delayed his college application process. But this minor setback did not deter Jesse, and instead, he focused his energy on helping others. He did this by raising money for the Movember Foundation, a charity that helps to raise awareness for men's health issues, such as prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and men's mental health. Working with this charity certainly had a long-term impact on Jesse's life, and helped him put things into perspective. When Jesse was finally able to attend college, he opted to join the Wesleyan University, located in Middletown, Connecticut, and obtained dual U.S. citizenship and moved to the United States from Canada to pursue his bachelor's degree in mathematics. After graduating, Jesse was accepted into medical school at Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. His passion for helping others and desire to travel the world inspired him to use his newfound skills to work with Doctors Without Borders, a collective of medical professionals who help out those who are affected by injury or illness in conflict zones or countries affected by large numbers of diseases. Along with his empathy and love of learning, Jesse had developed a passion for traveling and learning about other cultures. So his work with Doctors Without Borders made a lot of sense for him, and his family could not have been prouder of him. To overcome the setbacks of his severe brain injury in high school and go on to become accepted into medical school just shows how tenacious Jesse truly was. His passion for travel and appreciation for other cultures prompted Jesse to take a gap year away from schooling, where he planned to explore new places on an 8-month backpacking trip through South America and then to Asia. Jesse had spent time traveling in the past, previously spending a semester in Prague, as well as taking a 7-week backpacking excursion in Western Europe. Before his trip, Jesse spent considerable time at home with his mom planning out every detail of the trip. He mapped out his routes, planned camping sites and hostels along the way, made lists of supplies that he would need, and ensured he didn't go into the trip without a plan of action for any situation that may arise. He even made plans to meet up with some friends who would be in the areas he passed along the way. Now, if you've never been on a trip like this yourself, it's important to mention that trips such as these give the adventurer the ability to meet with significant self-discovery, while broadening their worldview and allowing them to experience a wide array of cultures, and oftentimes things that take you out of your comfort zone. And this was exactly what Jesse was looking forward to. After healing from his brain injury, Jesse was on a mission to rediscover who he truly was, and to never take life for granted again. But unfortunately for Jesse, these plans would never come to fruition. Jesse planned to be gone from September 24th, 2017 until May 15th of 2018, quite a long journey. The first stop was in Peru, which is in South America, where he would spend time backpacking and hiking trails until heading to Asia for the second leg of his trip in early January. Jesse's mother dropped him off at the airport on the morning of September 24th, wishing her son safe travels, not knowing this would be the last time she would ever see him. Later that afternoon, Jesse arrived in Lima, where he stayed for a couple of days before taking a bus on September 26th to Huaraz, Peru, which was approximately 7 hours from Lima. He arrived in Huaraz in the early morning hours of September 27th. Just after arrival, at 6:13 a.m., Jesse used his phone to Google directions to the nearest Kame house. Then at 6:15, searched for directions to the nearest Kame House hostel. A few moments later, he searched for directions to the address of the backpacker hostel where he intended to stay, and dropped a pin at 6:24 a.m., beginning his walk to his destination. At 6:25, about a block from the bus station, Jesse sent a Snapchat to a friend. 5 minutes later at 6:30 a.m., security footage shows Jesse checking in at the hostel. At 6:33 a.m., he sends another Snapchat just outside of the hostel, before Googling directions to the nearest marketplace. About 10 minutes later, he sent text to check in with friends and forwarded confirmation of his check-in to his mom. This digital footprint serves as proof that Jesse was diligent about keeping his friends and family informed about his travels, and he wasn't one to overlook the safety of being in a foreign area alone. The next morning, CCTV footage shows Jesse leaving the hostel at 4:30 a.m. and walking toward an area where people were known to wait for transportation. That morning, Jesse sent a text to his mom about his 4-day excursion. He informed her that due to a lack of cell service, he wouldn't be in touch until October 2nd. Jesse was embarking on a 31-mile hike along the Santa Cruz Trail, a hike he had long dreamed of taking. It's typical for this hike to take 3 to 4 days, so his texts with his mother were perfectly normal and likely meant to keep her from worrying if she didn't hear from him for a few days. Hikers on this trail have the option of hiking from east to west or west to east. Jesse decided to hike the trail from west to east and wanted to complete the hike in 4 days due to a pre-purchased bus ticket intended to take Jesse back to Juarez at the end of his trek. Jesse opted to do this relatively difficult hike solo instead of completing it with the guide, as a companion on this hike more than doubled the cost, and Jesse was confident in his ability to complete the hike on his own, despite it being recommended to utilize a trekking company. The elevation in this region is significantly different from what Jesse was used to. To put this into perspective, the elevation at his college in Connecticut is around 30 feet, while this trail ranges from between 9,000 to over 15,000 feet of elevation. Most experts recommend spending a minimum of 2 nights in the region to get acclimated, but Jesse had only spent 1. Not adjusting to elevation properly can lead to altitude sickness, which can cause symptoms such as headaches, nausea, and even death. Nevertheless, Jesse set out from the trailhead to begin the hike of his dreams, but instead, it would become the hike of nightmares. Settled in the snow-covered peaks of the Cordillera Blanca range in the Andes, this Santa Cruz backpacking trip is known to be one of the most beautiful trails in the world. While most people gather in this area to traverse the trails near Machu Picchu, this often overlooked hiking area offers incredible solitude for such a stunning place. This hike traverses through the valleys of the Cordillera Blancas while passing gorgeous lakes along the way to the highest point on the trek, Punta Union. Despite its stunning beauty, advertisements for this hike strongly advise against embarking on this trek alone if you're not a highly experienced backpacker. There are also several warnings about AMS, or acute mountain sickness. Most people coming to Peru are arriving from near sea level, much like Jesse was, and require a few days in camp to acclimate before heading out on the Santa Cruz trek. It's strongly recommended that travelers go on several day hikes in the area to prepare themselves for this multi-day backpacking trip. Nevertheless, Jesse arrived at the trailhead, paid his fees, adjusted his pack, and embarked on his solo journey through the mountains of Peru, completely unaware of the dangers to come. A few days later, October 2nd came around, and no one heard from Jesse. His mother, who was patiently waiting to hear from her son, didn't instantly begin to worry. She assumed that Jesse may have taken an extra day or two to complete the hike, especially considering that he went at it alone. It was October 7th before his mother really began to worry about him. She still had not heard from him, so she began to reach out to his friends to see if anyone had been in contact with him. As mentioned earlier, Jesse was great about staying in contact and frequently used social media, such as Snapchat. She was soon to find out that there had been no word from Jesse since September 28th, the day he began his hike, meaning he'd been MIA for over a week at this point. She began combing through any sources she could think of to find information about Jesse's whereabouts. Looking a little closer, his mother was relieved to see that Jesse had purchased an app that day, leading her to believe that Jesse was somewhere safe. But unfortunately, it was later revealed that Jesse downloaded this app on the 28th, likely as a free trial, and just the first automated charge was made on the 7th. This would be the first of many disappointments as Alyssa attempted to locate her missing son. No one close to Jesse wanted to jump the gun about something being wrong, in case he was just enjoying himself. But after a week of no contact from him, his family and friends became convinced that something was wrong. See, Jesse was meticulous. He scheduled each day of his trip with careful precision and had a strict budget to adhere to. He was not one to deviate from his plans. Realizing just how out of character this was for her son, Alyssa decided it was time to report her boy missing. Jesse's mother finally decided to file a missing person report on October 14th, 16 days after he left the trailhead. This report was filed with embassies in Peru, Canada, and the US. She also reported her son's disappearance to the FBI. The same day she filed the report, she also hired a private search and rescue team to help search for him. This team traveled all the way from Mexico City to assist in locating the missing hiker. On October 17th, Alyssa landed in Juarez to search for her son. Authorities in Peru did not have many resources to help her search for Jesse, so most of this landed on her own shoulders. Shortly after her arrival in Juarez, Jesse's family and friends quickly began to spread the word about his disappearance. And on October 21st, a $10,000 reward was posted. The next day at a news conference, his mother voiced concerns that all of the info she'd gathered led her to believe that he may have been abducted, and stated that she believed this was the only plausible theory, since people don't just disappear into thin air. About a week later, on November 8th, Alyssa hired an elite search and rescue team from Israel, known as Magnus, to aid in the search for Jesse. Israel is one of the only countries in the world with the ability to search for missing people on an international level. This team conducted interviews, searched the trails, utilized drones, underwater robots, and dogs, and various other resources to locate Jesse. They initially found absolutely no evidence of Jesse, and were unable to confirm that Jesse even made it to the trail that day. But their inability to find any evidence of Jesse's whereabouts is just the beginning of the mystery surrounding his disappearance. You see, to even access the trail, travelers are required to check in with their passports, pay their fees, and sign in. Yet there was no record of Jesse ever doing so. The park employees were initially uncooperative and would not agree to hand over the check-in documents from the day Jesse began his hike. It was later discovered that those working the check-in area on the day Jesse was supposed to begin his hike were not legitimate employees of the park, so the sign-in documents from that day were incomplete, and some had even been forged. The original sign-in sheets were either accidentally or purposefully destroyed or lost, so that when authorities asked to see the sign-in sheets for September 28th, the people working at the trailhead just copied the sheet from the 28th of August and just changed the date. Obviously an incredibly immoral thing to do when there's a person's life at stake here. These workers were more worried about losing their jobs than they were about saving a life, which really shows the character of the type of people we're working with here. Now, while it's possible that the document from September 28th was accidentally misplaced or never properly logged in the first place, it could also be possible that these employees knew something had gone wrong, but they weren't willing to talk about it. Meanwhile, authorities began contacting those who lived and worked on these trails, including the local guides who often accompany travelers on their journeys. Unfortunately, though, the natives of this region were unwilling to speak with authorities, which isn't super uncommon. This is a small, poor, tight-knit community, with the belief that if anyone were to be found dead on one of these trails, they would likely be blamed for it. While the locals were largely unhelpful, authorities did discover that it's considered a common practice for local guides to place any bodies they find on the trail in the nearest body of water. Yet those underwater robots that Magnus utilized never found anything substantial located in the surrounding bodies of water, so much of this has essentially been ruled out. Magnus also used technology to search social media for photos taken on the trail and the surrounding areas during the time that Jesse would have been there, and began reaching out to people to see if anyone remembered seeing him. They were able to locate two men from France who camped next to Jesse on the night of September 30th, proving that Jesse had indeed been on the trail after the 28th of September. This was the first major lead the investigative team had come across. The campers reported that Jesse told them he wasn't feeling well and that he was suffering from headaches and diarrhea. He might have also been dehydrated. They also reported that he seemed disoriented and was likely suffering from altitude sickness, which was highly likely. The next morning, when the hikers woke up, They stated that Jesse told them he was feeling better and appeared to be doing better than the day before, so they didn't object when Jesse continued on his hike. He carried on his way, and they believed Jesse would be perfectly fine. But they had no idea just how wrong they really were. Another group of hikers reported seeing Jesse later on October 1st, shortly after 3 p.m. They reported that he appeared to be sick again and was walking very slowly, about a kilometer from the highest point of the hike. They told Magnus that Jesse asked them where he could find some water and mentioned that he was struggling to stand. Due to Jesse's state, it's surprising that no one offered to help him in any way. Those who reported sightings of him noticed his fragile condition, but chose to leave him to fend for himself, offering him no water, no food, nothing. Now, it's possible they didn't have any of these items to spare, but that doesn't make the situation any less heartbreaking. These backpackers were the last people to report seeing Jesse. On November 30th, 2 months after Jesse went missing, his mother, Alyssa, went on global news to highlight the extensive search for her son. She stated she would never stop looking for him and would do whatever was necessary to bring him home. His father, Todd, spent over 9 months living in Peru, spending every day trying to locate their son. He went door to door looking for answers and hiked the surrounding area daily. He set up a website, jesseprotected.com, where he posted updates about his search. He also posted flyers all over the surrounding area in hopes that someone would recognize Jesse and help lead to his discovery. Because he hadn't located his body, and because he hiked the same trails as Jesse, Todd believes his son has to be alive somewhere. He doesn't see anywhere that Jesse could have fallen or had an accident. These facts reinforce his parents' belief that Jesse was abducted by someone. They refuse to believe that Jesse could have lost his life without some sort of physical proof, and rightfully so. But on May 16th of the following year, the day after Jesse was supposed to return home from his backpacking trip, his mother completed her hike on the Santa Cruz Trail. Upon completion, Alyssa stated that she was finally willing to admit that Jesse must have lost his life due to altitude sickness. She explains that the trail is difficult and poorly marked. She added that without a guide, she wouldn't have been able to complete the journey. Afterward, her search for Jesse became a recovery mission. She returned in August of 2018 to hike the trail again with a canine team specializing in finding human remains, but still, they found nothing. 1 full year after Jesse's disappearance, Alyssa spoke with the Montreal Gazette and stated that she no longer believes her son to be alive, but she is still focused on locating his body and bringing him home. She continues to pay his cell phone bill just in case Jesse's still out there somewhere, but she knows that the likelihood of this is very, very small. Todd, on the other hand, believes differently. He's firm in his belief that since they've been unable to locate any remains, Jesse was abducted and is being held against his will to perform forced labor. He's raised the reward to $500,000 in hopes that his money will motivate someone to come forward or release his son. In the beginning stages of the investigation, it initially seemed as if Jesse got lost or had some type of accident on the trail, which is all too common in stories such as these. One would figure that if this were the case, he would have been found hungry and dehydrated, or possibly injured by other backpackers. Worst case scenario, one would assume that his body would have been found somewhere along the trail. But without any trace of Jesse, there remains a sense of mystery surrounding his disappearance. A sense of hope that his parents just can't let go of. And who could blame them? Certainly not me. There's no evidence to suggest that Jesse lost his life that day. So it's wholly understandable that his parents are so determined to continue searching for him. What makes this situation so much more difficult is that detectives have concluded that many people with a connection to Jesse on this trip have withheld information from searchers, making it all the more suspicious. Not only those working in the park that day, but even the man who owns the hostel that Jesse was staying at, Chris Garcia. Video surveillance shows Jesse at the hostel. However, when questioned by authorities, Chris states that Jesse was never there. This hostel has great reviews, and many who rated it so highly have great things to say about the security. So why would the owner lie and say Jesse was never there when he clearly was? Comments on the Find Jesse Facebook page place him in several places around South America, with commenters stating that they saw him firsthand, with a plethora of theories being thrown around. So the question remains, what happened to Jesse? Where's his body? How have authorities been unable to find a single trace of him anywhere? Due to this being a huge area of land with treacherous terrain and many dangerous native predators, the possibilities of where Jesse ended up seem endless, not to mention the well-known fact that locals dispose of many bodies found in the area by dumping them into nearby bodies of water. The private investigative team Magnus believes that Jesse had succumbed to the elements, and when his body was discovered, someone moved it and never reported it to the authorities. Otherwise, someone would have surely found it by now. His family and friends fiercely loved Jesse. It's heart-wrenching to imagine the pain and everlasting uncertainty that they've endured, knowing that someone so smart and so talented with such a bright future disappeared on a trip he'd been dreaming about, never to be seen or heard from again. Jesse's loved ones worked tirelessly to locate him, only to return home empty-handed and emotionally drained each and every time. Those familiar with this disappearance hope that one day there will be a discovery so that his family and friends can have some sort of closure. In the meantime, the search for Jesse continues, and we can only hope that one day his family will find some answers and the closure they so desperately seek. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of True Crime Stories. If you enjoyed this video, check out this other interesting case I covered, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free and keeps you up to date with all of my future videos. You can also click that join button below to support the channel and see new videos long before everyone else does. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.